Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the San Diego Festival of Books virtual author Q&A. My name is Christina Davis. I'm a reporter at the Union-Tribune, and I have covered criminal justice and courts and police for my entire career, basically. Today, I'll be talking with Lieutenant Joe Kenda. Hi, Joe.
Hello, Christina. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Joe is a veteran homicide detective with the Colorado Springs Police Department, and you all probably know him from TV. Homicide Hunters ran for 9 seasons, highlighting some of the more than 350 homicide cases that he and his team have solved. And he's now discussing other cases from around the country in his new show called American Detective. And I guess it just wrapped up the first season on air, and we'll see if there's a second season, we hope. He has a new book out called Killer Triggers, and that's what we'll be discussing today. And here's what it looks like. I just read mine. I got the cool autographed copy. Thank you. Just some housekeeping. I'm going to be speaking with Joe here for about 30 minutes, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes at the very end of our conversation for questions from you guys, the viewers. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of good ones. Make sure that you put your questions in the Facebook chat, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So let's dive right in. Joe, your first book was published in 2017. It's called I Will Find You, Solving Killer Cases from My Life Fighting Crime. And that seems more like a memoir, right? How would you say that Killer Triggers, your new book, is different?
Well, the first book was a memoir, excuse me, about my entire time in the police department, both in uniform and in plain clothes. Killer Triggers is a different perspective. It excuse me, I say it's a conversational thing. Imagine me sitting on your sofa and telling you some stories, which is what that is. I don't pretend to understand people, but they do interest me. The police are in the business of the who, what, where, when, and how questions. The why question is ultimately a jury question, but that one always intrigued me. What would cause someone to do this? Why would some emotional trigger be pulled within them that allowed them to set a ball of violence in motion, which is what murder is?
I'm glad you said it's like sitting, like I'm sitting across from you, just talking over a cup of coffee, because that's very much what the book felt like to me reading it.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I achieved what I was after then, if that's the case.
Yeah. I would imagine that of all of the homicides that you've come across, that there's probably plenty that you'd never really figure out the why. I mean, would that be true? That there
are? Yeah, of course. The human mind is a very complicated piece of machinery. Sometimes that trigger is relatively obvious, and sometimes it isn't. And there are even occasions when even the person responsible can't explain it.
How did you go about choosing the 10 that you dig into in this book?
I chose those because they came to mind, first of all, because they're all a little bit different. They're all different than each other, except, of course, for the violence. But I chose them for the reason that they have a different perspective on why this case occurred.
And what are some of those common triggers that you talk about, or that you've maybe don't even talk about in the book, but you've seen?
There's always drugs, money, and sex are the 3 primary drivers of violent crime. Drugs account for 65% of all murders in this country, so they're a very big player. Failure to pay for them, attempts to steal them, on and on, all the different subparts of the drug question that results in violent death. And money is another very strong motivation, and sex and all the subparts of that, lovers' triangles, that sort of thing. But there's other things as well. There's madness. People have an issue, a mental health issue. Dementia is another factor which no one really thinks about. That's featured in this book as well. An entire chapter, in fact, devoted to that issue. There's different things that people don't think about that wind up being a trigger for violence.
And by going through some of these case studies and identifying some of those triggers, is there some kind of a lesson that we can learn from that, or that you're trying to tell the general public?
Well, particularly in the dementia case, which is the chapter 3 of this case, the unraveling of a good man. One should pay attention when someone close to them changes their personality in dramatic ways. They become quiet, they become sullen, they become threatening, they start talking about doing people harm. This is very serious stuff. It has moved from the subconscious to the conscious mind. They're telling you that they have these thoughts, that they think people should be hurt, people should be killed. You need to get professional help for them. It's not a phase. It's not something that's going to go away. It's something that's going to cause horrible problems. That's one.
One of the themes that I did see was you definitely highlighted a lot of cases and killers, and the dementia case is a good example of that, of people that maybe you would never think, people close to them would never think they'd be capable of murder, that they'd be involved in something like that. And yet, here we are. And then there's the people that, kind of have these violent tendencies from the get-go, and it's like, oh yeah, no surprise there, right?
Of course.
I mean, you've seen it all, right? I mean, it's not just this mold, right?
No, it's not. What I've determined over my experience, humans are dangerous. We are all potentially violent. We have enough judgment to overcome our emotions for the most part. But when that reverses and emotion overcomes judgment, humans revert to their worst instincts. Their worst. Morality melts. Consequences no longer exist. Limits are not to be observed. All that remains is the sheer thrill of the bloodletting.
That's pretty dark.
That's an fact. We're not that far out of a tree. We just like to think we are.
And what about being a victim too? I know that people who are living more high-risk lifestyles, I guess you could say, are going to be more likely to be a victim of a homicide. But there's also people that can just randomly fall victim.
There's something to consider about the randomness of homicide. Only 3 to 5% of murders, 3 to 5%, depending upon the year, are stranger killings. 95% of the time, you know the person who is taking your life by some method or means. You might be married to them. You may be in business with them. You might work for them. On and on. It is someone you know. It's not someone you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't. And that's the scariness of it all, I suppose. People don't like to believe that. They like to believe that life is orderly, and if you work hard and you go home every night and you pet the dog and you kiss the wife and you watch a little TV and go to bed, the things going to be fine. And for the most part, that's absolutely the case. However, life is ultimately random. Things happen over which you have no control and over which you have no knowledge of. It could result in your unlikely and untimely demise.
I'm sure that makes it a little bit easier for a lot of homicide cases, at least focusing on the people around the victim rather than...
Well, the most important thing to learn in a homicide investigation, tell me about the victim. Tell me about him. Where does he work? Does he work? Is he married? Does he have a girlfriend? Is he bisexual? Does he use drugs? Does he have a secret life? Where does he get his dry cleaning done? Where does he buy his gas? Because somewhere in that circle of acquaintances, somewhere, he has encountered someone that has made him look like this.
Mm-hmm. One of the triggers that you talk about is sex, and we'll keep this conversation PG-13. But at one point in the book, you share a conversation you have with a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist basically said, hey, I'd be happy sitting down and talking for hours with you about all of the triggers for homicide, except it's sex, because sex as a trigger is such a wild card. And one of the quotes that you have that you attribute to the psychiatrist is, you cannot predict behaviors that involve sexual urges and desires. After the survival instinct, our sexual instincts are the most powerful driving force in human behavior. Are there cases that you've handled that lead you to the same conclusion?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People get involved in things through their basic instincts and desires. And what that psychiatrist was telling me was that after survival, sex is the driving force in all people. In most people, it is for a person of the opposite sex of approximately the same age. If it's not, it can be anything at all. And it can drive them to commit crimes because they are driven to satisfy that desire. And his comment at the end was, so you tell me sex? I tell you all bets are off. I don't know what someone might do. That's interesting coming from a psychiatrist. I'm just a policeman.
Mm-hmm. And kind of the conclusion, I guess, that the psychiatrist came to as well is that that's why it's very hard for sexual-driven criminals to be rehabilitated, because it's kind of that desire is going to.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming. Child molesters are a good example of that, who plan their life around their sexual desires. Very organized offenders, very organized. They play a game with everyone, all designed to access children. Really scary.
So one of the cases that you talk about, and I think it's one where sex is a trigger, you basically talking about having a nagging feeling that you could be dealing with a potential serial killer, that this person could kill again. How many times in your career have you gotten that nagging feeling about a case, and what about those cases makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck?
I only got that impression twice in my entire career. Two different people who I absolutely believed were predators.
Can you tell me about?
They killed because they like it. That's a real difference. Most people kill because they're motivated to do so. They become enraged, they become angry, they want revenge, they believe someone has done something horrible to them, and they're going to kill them as a result. A person like these two individuals do so like you like to watch television. They like it, and they like to do it, and they feel nothing about having done it. Nothing at all. They're true sociopaths. The only emotion a sociopath is capable of is rage. Don't make me mad. I don't feel emotion. I don't feel love. I don't feel sympathy, empathy, none of that. I don't know what those are. I have no such feelings. I only know that I want you to do something, and if you don't do it, I will kill you. And I won't remember that 5 minutes later. I've met two of those.
Which can you go over each case just real briefly? Just tell us what happened.
We had a guy who killed a guy he gave a ride to. Okay, a guy's in a bar, too drunk to drive, asks for a ride home. A guy volunteers to provide. Same. The volunteer is a serial killer. He takes him home. He stabs him 11 times in the chest with a kitchen knife, disembowels him, and displays his entrails around the body. Then he sets fire to the building he lives in, which could have killed everybody, except somebody saw the smoke and called the fire department. When we finally captured him, long story short, we were able to prove 15 counts of first-degree murder on him in several jurisdictions. He thought that was amusing because he claimed he did 23, and we weren't smart enough to know about the other 8. And he refused to tell us because it was a game to him that he knew something we didn't know. He would make the hair stand up in the back of your neck and make you awake at night if you thought about him. He's currently locked up inside of a prison, of course, and will never get out. But he is there, and he exists. And he looks like a movie star. Incredibly handsome, flashing smile, bodybuilder, women who would drop their groceries and follow him down the street. That good looking. But he's a killer. Absolute stone killer. So that's the old story. What does a murderer look like? He looks like you, and he looks like me.
Well, and aren't there a lot of historical examples of good-looking serial killers using that to lure their prey in?
Well, if you consider Ted Bundy, he's a very handsome fellow.
Yeah.
Bundy was incredibly psychotic and was responsible to kill 36 women. Yes, of course. Happens. It's rare. That's why everybody seems to know their names. It's very rare. That individual is a very rare snake indeed. Now, the other guy I was just absolutely bonkers, crazy guy. He was killing on the cycles of the moon. It meant something to him. He waited for a full moon before he would decide to kill someone. It was really bizarre. But had we not found him, he would have kept killing. He killed 2 before we caught him, but he would have killed 100. Now, if you talk to him for 5 minutes, you realize he's completely disconnected from reality. The other guy, the handsome guy, not at all. Very intelligent, which made him a lot more scarier.
I've been covering homicides and police work for a really long time, and it seems to me like there's this overwhelming assumption by the general public that solving homicides is pretty much all forensic work these days. And as your book shows, a lot of it's just pounding the pavement and knowing how to talk to people and following up a lot of crappy dead ends. A lot of your cases were in the 80s and the 90s, right? But
yes,
what is one advance in technology that you wish you had then, that we have now that you think could have really made a difference?
The greatest piece of technology today is DNA and the analysis of Sane. Now, it came in when I was still working, and in fact, I had the first case prosecuted in the state of Colorado involving DNA as the primary proof in 1991 and convicted 2 people of murder as a result. That is a remarkable scientific achievement. The rest of forensics is questionable. It really is. Now, if you have CSI television program, you have some little device in your hand that's got 3 batteries in it, and you answer the device a question, and it provides an answer in 12 seconds. You got to arrest a bad guy, and everybody goes to lunch. That's how it works on TV. The reality can't be any further from the truth. Forensics, for the most part, is the opinion of the examiner. In his opinion, that's the fingerprint of this guy. In another examiner's opinion, it's not the fingerprint of that guy, and so on and so on. They talk a better game than they play in some of those cases. And you have a test for something, and you say, what about this? Well, the moon wasn't in the right phase, and the stars weren't in alignment, and we didn't get a result. Oh, thank you so much. DNA is different. It's scientific proof, period, the end. And that really is the key factor in the modern day.
Have you had any cases from when you were on that ran cold that have later been solved through DNA?
I had 31, yes, I had 31 cases unsolved. Out of 387, I cleared 356 by arrest. That's a clearance rate of 92%. 31 unsolved. Of those 31, 3 have now been solved through advances in DNA technology as applied by a cold case unit in Colorado Springs. I wasn't responsible for that, but they kept re-examining evidence with new techniques in DNA recovery and resulted in 3 clearances with the rest of those 31 cases. So down to 28.
So talking about that clearance rate, which is exceptionally high, and you were doing it without DNA technology for the most part, right? Just those tried and true shoe leather techniques.
Correct.
Why were you guys so successful? I mean,
because we had a policy. We had a policy. You don't kill one of our taxpayers and get away with it. We take it personally. It wasn't a job, it was a mission. No one went home if there was something to do. We all stayed there and did what had to be done. We weren't smarter than everybody else. We just wouldn't give up. We would not give up. We were at one case for 9 years before we turned it, but we turned it. That's the way it's done. It's the way it should be done. A lot of people don't do that, but a lot of people do still to this day.
Mm-hmm. And that case you worked for 9 years, is that one of the ones in the book?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No.
Well, there was another case in the book that seemed to have taken several years to solve.
It did. Yeah,
the victim was maybe from a kind of lower rung of society, maybe a forgotten piece of society. And you talk about a comment one of your newer detectives made. Why are we putting so much effort into this guy in this case? Yes. And you had a comeback.
And I went crazy. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter to me. You're a victim. You have as much right as anyone else. This guy was not the best guy, not the best this, not the best that. But somebody took his life violently. They stabbed him 31 times and stole a $40 radio from him. No one deserves that. He certainly didn't. And I had a young detective 5 years into the case. I said, here's a lead on a Eric Stanley Houston case on the west side. I want you to go talk to this guy. He said, well, that's that guy in that motel, isn't it? Well, nobody cares about him. And everyone in the room, my guys, all suddenly found something else to do because they knew what was going to happen. And I turned absolutely white. And I said, hey, don't you ever say that to me again. If you do, you're going to be at the airport with Tuesdays and Thursdays off, midnight to 8, writing tickets. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Now you go take that lead and you go work it and you come back right now and tell me what you've learned. Now get out of my sight. I was absolutely wild. Mm-hmm. Now he never did that again. And he learned a lesson. Mm-hmm. Everybody deserves us if someone killed them.
So I've covered homicides probably for the first 10 years of my career, more at a distance, obviously, from the case than you are. But, I've done probably over 100 death knocks, on victims' doors. And I finally had to move on to another beat. I moved on to courts, little bit of distance, still in the same ballpark. But, I just got really burned out from all the trauma that I was covering. So that's me. I can't even imagine the emotional baggage that you have, that you've had to deal with.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the price you pay for the work.
Yeah. You talk about in the book about how Homicide Hunter was really therapeutic for you in a lot of ways. Why was that?
Because I never talked to anybody about what I was feeling or experiencing, because you don't do that. I was raised in a time frame in this country when you just get on with it. You take the pain, you take the suffering, and you keep your mouth shut. That's the way it was. And I did that. And I never actually exposed it to anyone, including my wife. A little bit, I'd talk to her about cases, but not really. Not about how I felt, the horror of it all of that. How you don't want to step in the blood because you ruin your shoes. You don't talk about that sort of thing. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started that TV show and they said, we want to hear it all, I said, you do? Yes. And that they turned that camera on and it was like floodgate. It poured out of me, just poured out of me. It was so intense that a couple of occasions the director walked out of the room because it upset him. And I said, you said you wanted to hear it all. When you're a policeman, you don't have time to process what you've seen or done. You move from one to the next and to the next. And you stuff it in a box somewhere inside you and you expect it to stay there. And one day it starts knocking on the box. You have to let me out. And that's what that TV show did for me. It let the contents of the box out. And I feel immensely better than I ever have.
So, talking with a member of the press here, I'm curious what your take is on that relationship between homicide detective or homicide lieutenant and the local press. As the lieutenant, I know you're kind of the one that has to go in front of the TV cameras.
I always do. Oh, of course. Yeah, I did all the time.
What's that relationship like? Probably a can't live with him, can't live without him kind of thing.
They didn't want to talk to the press information officer because he's just some schlep that got assigned to the job. You know, they put him in the PIO position. They want to talk to the guy that does the work. They want to talk to the murder guy, which happens to be me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do press interviews constantly, all the time. I had a simple plan. Tell the truth. If you don't know, say it. I don't know. I don't know. I had a reporter at a scene one night said, I was stepping out of the car. I didn't even know who was dead yet. I was just getting out of the car. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. This reporter sticks a microphone on my face and says, do you have any suspects? I said, yeah, 600,000 of them, most of the metro population of Colorado Springs at the time, including you. Now, excuse me, I've got something to do. And I would step away. Or they would say things to me that were just silly, and I would give them a silly reply. We're putting somebody in a police car in handcuffs, and he's yelling and screaming, and they say, is he a suspect? And I would look at them and say, he's assisting us with our inquiries. Whatever that means, decide what that means if you'd like. It just gets to the point where sometimes you get annoyed with the silliness of it all. If somebody asked me a serious question, I'd provide a serious answer. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you didn't get that. You got silliness. I had a, quote, investigative reporter once who said, he yelled at me. I had a woman and 2 little kids killed. Bad scene. He yells at me over the tape. He says, hey, Kenda, when are you going to bring out the bodies? We need the body shot. We're going live at 5 o'clock. I said, come here. Come here. Can I bring my camera? Please bring your camera. So he comes out of the yellow tape for the big expose. I said, I have more respect for the guy who did this. He takes a position. All you take is pictures. Get back on the other side of the yellow tape.
Ouch.
He didn't like that. I didn't care. We have a woman and 2 children murdered here, and all you think about is your body shot? What's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. If something is.
And we wouldn't even do that nowadays, you know, to put a body on the front page of the paper is like.
Of course not. Of course
not. Yeah.
But this was the 1980s.
Yeah.
And if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. Let's see. you're pretty much a celebrity at this point. I'm sure a lot of people, even in just Colorado Springs, knew you while you were on TV all the time, right? And now
Oh, I was.
the world.
Yeah.
So you say you've been approached by a lot of fans just out on the street. What are some of your weirder fan interactions? And you also say that
I'll tell you a funny one.
Okay.
I'll tell you a funny one. My wife and I are coming out of a restaurant in Virginia Beach. And there's a guy in a business suit. I mean, he looks like an intelligent guy, well-dressed. He's across the street and he recognizes me. And he runs across the street and almost gets hit by a cab. I mean, the cab locked it up to keep from hitting him. And he runs up to me and looks at me with his eyes the size of silver dollars. And he says, "Do you know who you are?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I've got a driver's license in my pocket with my picture on it." And he got the strangled look in his face. He said, "That was really stupid." I said, "Yes, it was. My name is Joe Kenda. What's your name?" And we kind of laughed about it. But people say awkward things because they don't know what to say.
You're starstruck.
I guess. But it's just so weird. You know, it's just so weird to me. It's so weird. I'm always nice to everybody. I pet the dog and I hold the baby and I pose for pictures and I sign things and I do all of that because I think it's no more than right that you should do that. But sometimes it's really funny when people do something or say something. It's really like silly. And you just kind of laugh and say, like, "Did you realize what you just said?" "What? What did I say?" And you repeat it to them. "I didn't say that." "Well, yes, actually you did." It's just interesting to me.
And that's a lot different from the role like we were talking earlier. You said, as homicide, as a cop, people that were scared of you or hated you, right?
That's exactly right.
Some people
If
wanted
my
to
wife and I went to a party, the temperature would drop 30 degrees when we walked in the door. Every toilet in the building would flush because everybody's getting rid of their dope and everybody's looking at their watch. "Oh my God, it's 8 o'clock. I got to go home." And my wife would say to me, "You're really a buzzkill." "Yes, I am, apparently." Yeah, of course.
So weren't your friends that were kind of outside of cop circles though kind of intrigued by your job? I mean, I know my friends who are have nothing to do with that world or with journalism kind of think it's glamorous and
They do. Yeah, they do. And I made a point when I was younger that and working to have friends outside the police department. My friends all did something else for a living. They were an airline pilot. One guy was an engineer for Ford Aerospace. Another guy was a tank commander at Fort Carson. People that did something different than I, so we could have something to discuss when we got together or whatever. It's something different than unusual. But people do believe that. But it's not that. It's the pursuit of someone who's taken a life. You have to stand in the shoes of the victim because no one else is going to, and protect their interests against the world and find who did this to them. That's not glamorous, but it's very rewarding when you do.
Well, I think we can turn to some viewer questions right now, if we have any. I know we've got someone who's looking over some questions, and we'll put some up. All right, this is from Linda Ruggieri. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry. Transitioning from working on the force, like writing factual reports, to book writing is a big leap. What was the most difficult part for you in writing this type of nonfiction?
That's a good question. The most difficult part, of course, is not to sound like a cop, not to write a report that's designed to be gone over by defense attorneys in a courtroom for 6 months or a year, and be very, very cautious about how you say things and don't insult anybody and don't do any of that. And this is different. This is an opportunity to just express yourself. So, but initially it was very, very difficult. I wrote that book probably 5 or 6 times before I decided I liked it.
You're talking about Killer Triggers.
Oh, yeah.
First. Okay.
No, yeah, of course. This one, yeah, they're both of them. It's not easy to do. It was a rewarding experience, and I enjoyed it, but it was tough compared to what I'd spent a lifetime doing.
All right. This one's from Somos Chingosas. Is there a book you'd love to see as a feature film, and who would you cast?
Well, I don't know that I would do as a feature film. Somebody asked me once, they said, what if they wanted to make a movie about you? And I said, you're kidding. He said, no, what if they did? Who would you want to play you? I said, Dame Judi Dench. That would really throw everyone off. And God, Kenda's a British woman. I didn't know that. That'd be kind of fun.
Well, you've already got your reenactments on TV, right? You've got an actor who plays you and everything.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Who's a cop, right?
He was at one time he worked for a sheriff's department in Rochester, New York. Yes.
Okay.
And but he was an actor. That's what he does. He's a professional actor.
Okay.
And my wife thought he was very hot. And I said, well, that's great. Why don't you? Maybe you could live with him. And she would throw something at me, and that would stop that conversation. But
he's handsome.
Yeah, he's very nice looking. Much nicer looking than I ever was. But anyway, that's.
All right. This is from Fiona Lung. Hi, Joe. When did you first realize you wanted to write a book?
I just thought I wanted to express some things I wasn't able to say or talk about on TV, because television launders things to a degree. They have to. They appeal to a wide audience. They have to be a little cautious about what they say. Books aren't like that. And I was enjoying the therapy I was getting, the best kind of therapy. They were paying me instead of me paying them. And I thought the book would also serve to do that, and it certainly has.
How much did you have to, this is from me, edit out case details? What percent of some of those cases that we're reading about, that aren't going to be known to the public, that you're kind of keeping back?
Well, you stay away. I stayed away. Initially, I didn't. And then I thought, no, people don't need to know that. I stayed away from some of the really descriptive injuries and what happens in autopsies and that sort of thing. I stayed away from all of that because there's really no point in it other than just distress people. It doesn't add anything. In fact, in some ways, it detracts from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to express enough to have someone understand, but not too much to go beyond the pale with what you were talking about.
And have you heard from any victim families?
I have, and they're very pleased for the most part about everything, including the show, and mostly about the show because that's what they watch.
Mm-hmm.
And they're great. The thing, the most common thread was that every victim family always said the same to us when we said we'd like to do this show. It'd be okay with you, because we always asked. We don't have to, but we did. It's public record. You don't need anybody's permission. But we'd ask for it. And they would all say the same thing. I don't want my loved one to be forgotten. Please do the show.
Okay, another question. This is from Dorsey Rose. I noticed you're not wearing a blue shirt. You wore a blue shirt on each Homicide Hunter. Why was that?
Well, I was explaining that to someone recently, where television is all about consistency. They want you to look the same every single time. I had a closet full of blue shirts and a second closet filled with gray suits. My wife and I would joke about it. My wife hated it. But it is their method of operation. It becomes your signature look, as they put it. And by God, you will wear a blue shirt and a gray suit. I no longer own a blue shirt. I no longer own a gray suit. I decided that was part of the past, and it's gone.
And you were saying something you did with one of those blue shirts?
I auctioned one of the blue shirts I wore on the show and one of the gray suits I wore on the show for a charity auction. And it did extremely well. I was shocked. It brought in several $1,000s. People bought those items. For what purpose? I have no idea. And perhaps I don't want to know. But they did buy them.
Do you have a new uniform for your new TV show?
I have a pale yellow shirt and a dark navy sport coat. So that's the new blue shirt and gray suit. At least they're different colors.
Maybe we'll change it up for season 2, or we'll
Oh, no.
all the way through.
Consistency is the thing, you understand. Oh, no. Oh, there is no change. No.
This is from Ann Kenda. I'm sure you know her. Uncle Joe,
I do very well. She's my niece. Yes.
Do you follow present day murders in the news, or do you like to stay away from that?
I tend to stay away from it. It's like if you were a reporter, which you are, Christina, would you watch a program about being a reporter? No, you wouldn't, because you do.
I actually tried to. New York Daily News had some reality show about 8 years, and I tried to watch one episode, and I was so anxious after watching it. It's like I can never do that again.
Yes, of course, of course. And so I don't follow cases for that reason, and I just they're not my responsibility.
Do you ever mentor other homicide detectives, or do you consult on cases? Anyone call you up saying, lend me your brain for a little bit?
I've done that several times with people I know and people I've ran across over the years. A couple of times people I don't know, cops who call me and ask me questions and so on. So you try to keep your hand in. You try to be helpful if you can. You try to offer some advice on how to proceed, maybe something they hadn't thought of, or some technique that didn't come to mind. Mm-hmm. It's all about getting the job done.
This is from Paul Ingenieri. Hi, Joe. Outside of your own work, who do you admire in the crime field?
I admire every policeman who goes to work every day for little or no pay, who suffers the slings and arrows of the press and the public, and tries to do the right thing every day. They are to be admired. There is something about when someone does something unspeakable to someone else, you have two choices. You can remain seated or you can stand up. And the police officers in this country, men and women, stand up.
Hey, this is from Claudia Baserto. Working on crime, hosting a crime program, writing about crime. Could you stay sane? How could you stay sane and have some rest on your mind? I think that's what she means.
Well, you have to understand that your experiences in life are something you have experienced. You learn how to deal with them. Do you like them? No. Do you wish they'd go away? Yes. I have a photographic memory, which is both a blessing and a curse. You remember the good things, but you also remember the bad. You have to understand it is part of going through life. Not everything is going to be nice. Not everything is going to be wonderful. Some things are going to be absolutely horrible. It is the nature of things. Mm-hmm. I was able to deal with that reasonably well for the most part. But it's not easy. Nothing about it is.
Okay, I think we have a couple more questions left. Nancy Whitlock, what is your take on the Joan Benet Ramsey case?
I never discuss cases I don't know intimately, or I have not reviewed the case reports and seen all the evidence. I have not done that in that case, nor would I, because it was not my responsibility, nor was I involved in the investigation. So I don't have an opinion.
Fair enough. This is from Bill Rose. Joe, in your show, I see a Pittsburgh banner on the wall of your office. Did you live there? Did you go to Pitt?
I did go to Pitt. I graduated back in the day, 1968, for God's sake. I am from a coal mining town 30 miles east of Pittsburgh, Harmony, Pennsylvania, 6 miles south of Irwin. And I did go to the University of Pittsburgh. Kathy went to Duquesne, my wife. And we used to go see each other on a bus, a city bus across Pittsburgh, because Duquesne's downtown and Pitt's in Oakland. And lo and behold, we're still together.
Congratulations. No, that's
Thank you.
very hard with with that kind of work too. Well, that was our last question. Thank you so much for sitting and talking with us. You can purchase Killer Triggers through our Festival of Books bookstore, and the link there is on your screen. When you buy it here, it supports our independent bookstores, so please do that. And for all you Spanish speakers out there, we're having another author Q&A on April 29th at 12:30 p.m. That's going to be with Paula Ramos, and she's a host and correspondent for Vice, as well as a contributor to Telemundo News and MSNBC. And she'll be sharing her latest book, Finding Latinx. And our actual Festival of Books is going to be August 21st. And I think, Joe, you're going to be coming back in some way, hopefully, and talking with us.
All right.
So make sure to check out our website, sdfestivalofbooks.com, to see the lineup when that comes out closer. And I enjoyed our time together, and just thank you so much, Joe. And all you viewers out there, make sure to share this video. It should be on Facebook.
Thank you for having me, Christina. You're entirely welcome.